Hello, this is DrPaulCottrell, and I'm going to be going over the latest news on Russia, a little bit on Israel, and we'll open up with what's going on in New York in terms of the immigration and the policing of the city. This is PNN.
Assaults and robberies. Both are rising now that organized gangs are operating in New York City, and police say there could be hundreds of criminals out there, and they have no way of stopping them all.
They walked across the border for a better life, but now they are walking out in handcuffs after police say their American dream was to commit crime.
Police say a gang terrorized New Yorkers, robbing them and then hacking their phones to drain bank accounts of hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Surveillance video shows the moment two masked men broke into the back of a Bronx bodega, walked up to the register, and made off with $100,000 cash.
I think all the crime is getting worse right now. I mean, especially with the bikes and the mopeds and the scooters, everyone's riding around.
Police say this is one part of one migrant gang, and there are others. According to the police commissioner,
Okay, I spent 2 weeks testing the bearskin hoodie, and this bearskin hoodie, it blocks wind and cold like a beast.
According to the police commissioner, the city is in the middle of a crime wave. And it's gang-related. Now, although some of the gangs are made up apparently of asylum seekers, what nobody's talking about is there's other high-profile gang-related activity being orchestrated by gangs of New Yorkers as well. We're talking everything from cell phone theft to pickpocketing. A crime spree involving bodegas has seen certain businesses lifted for over $100,000. And the next time you're out at a bar and someone attractive approaches you and talks to you, they could be targeting you for some crimes that are so heinous, it makes me think it's probably not even safe to go out at night here. On top of that, some of the asylum seekers who've been caught up in this may have been exploited by gang leaders the police are now looking for. But before we get into why this is happening and how much damage is being done to the city, it's important to understand that many of the criminals who have been caught have already been controversially released without bail. So they're still out there somewhere for some reason. But what's alarming is that when last year ended, overall levels of crime in the city were down. There was a 12% decrease in extremely violent types of crime, but the reduced crime trend has reversed. And what most people don't know is that since 2019, overall crime in the city is up 32%, which means 1 out of every 3 New Yorkers are now more likely to be involved in some sort of incident. And the types of incidents happening now are unlike anything I've ever seen. So this right here might look like your typical New York City apartment building, but inside buildings just like this, there are gangs operating and using them as hideouts. Inside, you'll find illegal apartments full of the tools needed to commit modern crime. Stuff for hacking, stealing identity, reprogramming phones. And authorities think there could be hundreds of these gang operations hidden throughout the city that they haven't even discovered yet. But the mayor has made it clear that the gang activity we're talking about does not represent the majority of asylum seekers, many of whom have come here seeking a better life without the intent to commit crime.
How did these migrants end up on the wrong side of the law? Police say it did not happen overnight and that they are organized criminals. Police say a ringleader of the group has been recruiting migrants who recently arrived in the city to do his dirty work. He even had...
And a lot of alternative media, the truthers, patriots, they've been saying that this infiltration that's going on with a porous border is going to lead to more crime. Now, not everyone that's coming across the border is part of this, all right? It's a small fraction. But the point here is that all it takes is a small fraction. And what happens if it's not so much petty? What happens if it's more orchestrated terrorism? Which could happen easily because these people aren't being vetted. So don't be surprised that another 9/11 happens. And we let it happen again.
Inside man.
What a crazy operation. There's all these people involved. There's a ringleader. And apparently he was able to lure asylum seekers into his operation. And what's crazy is they even had their own IT person inside the apartment helping them break into all the stolen phones. And the police raid was pretty intense. They showed up pre-dawn, tons of people, body armor, equipment. There were a lot of guys, and they went into that place when everybody was asleep and arrested them.
Police say a gang terrorized New Yorkers. Here, a thief on a moped steals a purse, but most importantly, a phone. The phone is then hacked to drain the person's bank accounts. This one pattern has nearly 150 victims.
So apparently, these folks were part of a moped-related crime spree. That's how they would get the valuables and the phones. They'd ride up on one of these illegal mopeds that the police have since confiscated, and there would be two riders. There's the driver, and then there's the snatcher, and the snatcher would grab whatever they were trying to steal, and the driver would worry about driving away. It's very scary. Especially a lot of these are electric, and if they're electric, they're not going to make any noise when they approach you on the street. So if you have earpods or some sort of headphone in, you're not going to have any indication that they're coming until it's too late. Apparently, one person was seriously injured when their purse was grabbed, and the riders attempted to flee the scene while they were still hanging on. And the scariest thing about all this is if somebody steals your purse or your wallet or even your phone, that's your whole life. You got your bank account in there, you got all this stuff that in the name of convenience is on one device, but if people take that one device, everything's here. It's really sad. But it wasn't the ringleader who was out riding around on one of these mopeds.
Believe it or not, he has his own IT guy in there apparently breaking into the phone.
Police arriving to this apartment building where the suspects allegedly rent rooms inside an apartment. Once police hit the apartment door, they say the...
So it seems like the leader of this whole operation ended up recruiting people who otherwise would have been living in the city's shelters. That's terrible. But before we continue uncovering what these guys were up to and how many of their counterparts are still out there, in a sense, the leader of this thing was looking for people to exploit. Over 170,000 asylum seekers have come to New York City, and he was able to find vulnerable individuals in that population. Doesn't mean they're innocent, but it does mean he was offering them something very enticing. But one of the problems with this is police and the government here don't have a whole lot of warning of who these folks might be in advance of them committing a crime.
They're essentially ghost criminals. No criminal history, no photos, no cell phone, no social media. Sometimes we're even unclear on a name or a date of birth.
So apparently with local criminals, police can learn a lot about them based on where they might have grown up, what their online activity is like, where they went to school. Most Americans are already in the system to an extent, but somebody who just got here and has limited paperwork to begin with, maybe they're not. And since New York is a sanctuary city, they don't cooperate with the federal government, which, as we'll soon find out, could be limiting.
It's only going to get worse unless we do something about this illegal immigration. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the supplements that I offer. I have very high quality supplements, and if you follow my protocol, you're going to slow down aging, boost up your immune system, and get healthy. All right. One important supplement is turmeric. Turmeric is very important. It's an antioxidant, but it brings down inflammation. Take it every day to bring that pro-inflammatory cytokine response. Because there's an awful lot of people in the United States that is chronically inflamed. And because of that inflammation, it causes cellular damage and you age quicker. Resveratrol. It's an antioxidant, but it also helps to get rid of senescent cells. Resveratrol has been known to be part of an anti-aging protocol. Please go to my store and get the resveratrol to slow down that aging process, get rid of those senescent cells, and be able to get your body in homeostasis, to get it to be get it to heal, right? The whole idea isn't just get one supplement. There's a synergistic approach when you follow my protocol. So please go to my store and get the resveratrol. And lastly, to improve your mental acuity, take Clarity Factor. This gets rid of brain fog. In addition, if you take this every day, once a day or twice a day, I take it twice a day in the morning and mid-afternoon, but some people only take it once a day. But if you take it every day, what's going to happen is that your neurons are going to be firing more. You're going to be able to concentrate at work and at school, even if you're retired and you're not working and you're not in school. You want to get those dendrites firing more often, those neurotransmitters being released, so you maintain your mental acuity. Over time, as we get older, our dendrites start to recede. So that means that we have less connections in our brain, we think slower, and eventually there is a mental acuity decline. The whole idea here is to take this every day and to improve those dendritic connections. Those neurons will be firing. And when you take some of the other supplements that I have that improves the mitochondrial health, such as C60, what will happen is that you'll have more ATP for those neurotransmitters to be released, and therefore you'll have more dendritic connections. Therefore, you'll have less mental acuity issues as you get older. So please go to my store and get the clarity factor. This is way better than anything that Alex Jones sells. Back to the news and how New York is going to hell in a handbasket.
Amount of information the police have to make these arrests and find out who the bad guys are in the first place. But shockingly, a number of suspects who were arrested are also released without bail. And the reason police are searching for the ringleader is because he was arrested previously on a grand larceny charge, but also released without bail. And he wasn't apprehended in this police raid, and he's still out there on the loose. It's great that we're catching the bad guys, but if we just then turn around and release them and they go back to doing what they were doing, the city's not exactly any safer. And critics say this soft on crime approach is why local gangs of New Yorkers are doing stuff that might be even worse.
The assistant DA and the DA and the mayor have all had lectures at the Harvard Club, all right? And their approach on, quote, soft on crime stems from the idea that if you keep on incarcerating petty crime, you're going to create more hardened criminals because of they're in the system and they become, you know, more belligerent and more crime ridden, right? Especially when they get out. So the idea is to give them a second chance. The problem is that they give us a third and a fourth and a fifth and a sixth chance, all right? And this soft crime approach is emboldening individuals to start criminal activity, or they have the idea there's no repercussions and therefore continue the activity. So even though their intention, meaning Mayor Adams and the district attorney, maybe their intention was to try to give people second chances so they can still be a productive citizen. It's a failed policy. So gut that and go back to being strong on crime. But unfortunately, they're not going to do that. Now, to add insult to injury, what's happening is that you have researchers publishing papers that are, you know, stating on how it's socioeconomic issues that are causing these crimes, so that you need to be, you know, more helpful with these criminals. But when it's the second, third, or fourth time, then they need to have a policy that where it's strong on crime. Maybe the first, maybe when, you know, people should be given a second chance, depending on what kind of activity they did. But when it's habitual or when it's really egregious, then most likely the best policy is to be very hard on crime. The other problem is that these leaders within society, the mayor and the district attorneys and all the governor and all that, they're placating to the minority crowd, because a lot of the ones that are causing this crime are minorities. Now, the big conversation that that I saw at the Harvard Club when they were, you know, being asked these questions, when there was Q&A, it was, you know, more on the stance of give people a chance, you know, so they don't get into a system that makes them even more hardened criminals, cut costs for the criminal system because the society can't pay for it, so you're letting out criminals more often. So there are many variables that are involved in why this is happening in the inner cities, especially in New York. Can't afford it anymore to have a criminal system. You have, even though that there are socioeconomic hardship in some of these communities, what's happening, because there is no system, or there's a retreating system to try to fight back crime in the city. These criminals are becoming more emboldened, and it's getting worse. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. The crimes are becoming more belligerent, more egregious, more dangerous. So it's not just stealing something from Walgreens anymore. It's now shootouts on mopeds. And so it's stabbings and all this stuff. So, you know, it's a problem. And I do think that in our society, especially in New York, we need to be stronger on these incidences. But we have a weak mayor and we have a weak district attorney, placating to minorities. Even on the surface, if it seemed logical, their state trying to reduce crime by giving people second chance so they don't become hardened criminals, it's a failed policy. All right, you tried something different, district attorney, mayors of New York, you tried something different, it didn't work. Go back to a Giuliani era where you got to be hard on crime. And it's not just hard on crime, it's hard on petty crime. And when you're hard on that, then you're starting to push them out. What has happened now is because we're weak on crime, now the gangs are starting to reconstitute. It's a problem. Failed policy. See, if you want to placate to minorities and you buy into wokeism, and then just give them a second chance and a third chance and a fifth chance, what will happen is you're going to have a lawless society. Now, way back in the day in 2020, to prevent a certain pillar of the Biopatriot Act, we need to make sure that municipalities do not have funds to over-surveil the citizenry. New York has funds that are given to it for drone surveillance of its. They have a huge network of video cameras that is reminiscent of what's going on in London. I mean, London is probably the most televised video camera city in the world. Maybe in China it would be equal or just slightly above. But the point here is that we are going towards 1984, where you have a surveillance state. All right. And, you know, since I'm Gen X, I'm against the whole 1984 thesis. All right. So to stop that, stop funding these programs. But surveillance technology is still being implemented and being paid for at these police municipalities. So stop it. We got to truncate that. But that doesn't mean defund the police. I don't believe in defund the police in a broad statement. I believe in defund a surveillance state. Now, when it comes to these illegal immigrants and the crimes that are taking place that are petty all the way to extremely severe, we need to pay officers more to do their job, but we don't need 1984. That means more people on the street, giving them a good salary. That doesn't mean more cameras, doesn't mean surveillance technology, doesn't mean drones. And when you do that and you apply a Giuliani approach in New York, you will clean up the street. And it probably would take place in approximately 2 to 2.5 years. If you really are forceful with it, it would be you would see a major shift in 24 months. And you'd get rid of these gangs. But if the gangs start to entrench, there's going to be more drugs, there's going to be more crime, and the city's going to be less safe, the tax revenue is going to start to be a problem, and people are going to move out, just like what was happening in the 60s and the 70s. All because placating to wokeism.
Let's be real. Life can get tough to say the least, and especially without someone to talk to. And as men, this topic seems to be brushed off when it doesn't need to be that way. So that is.
Here we have your typical New York City bodega, deli, convenience store, whatever you want to call it. It might not look fancy, might not look like much. Perhaps you think they're just in here selling sandwiches, making pineapple juice. But to criminals, a place like this could be more valuable to hit up than an actual bank.
Surveillance video shows the moment two masked men broke into the back of a Bronx bodega, walked up to the register, and made off with $100,000 cash. One of the men wearing a hoodie.
That's insane. $100,000. Now, experts are saying that it was probably a week's worth of sales from the entire store, but the criminals made away with all that money in cash without getting caught. And apparently, if the criminals were to have tried to rob a bank, their chances of a successful robbery would have been 60%, and typical damages from a modern bank robbery are around $10,000. This was 10 times more than they would have got from a bank. There was probably a safe or something that they were able to break into, and it sounds like it was full and hadn't been emptied in quite some time. And as you'll see from the footage, the robbers definitely knew what they were doing.
One of the men wearing a hooded jacket can be seen rummaging through compartments until he finds the money, stuffs it in a backpack, and leaves.
A lot of the times they get away with $5,000, $10,000. That's not a story.
So as you can see from the hoods and the masks, this gang of criminals, they were professionals, and they had inside knowledge. We think they knew that money was in there, and they knew how to get in. So there's the little deli on the corner, but you can tell the storefront goes back here. And what do we have? Over here, we've got a couple of windows. Now, these look pretty secure, but it seems that there was a back door entrance, which is common in buildings like this, and that's what they were able to breach and enter the business. This particular deli doesn't have one, but there's another one down the street that does, right around the corner from the main. This one, it looks like they walled it all off, probably for security reasons. And as you can see from the footage, they deliberately decided not to go in the building's front door. They went in the back to attract as little suspicion as possible, and it doesn't seem like any alarm or anything went off, because if it had, they probably would have been moving a little bit quicker.
According to the NYPD, it happened sometime between 11 p.m. on Sunday and 5 a.m. on Monday at Los Castillos Mini Market on University Avenue. Owner Carlos Castillo was away on vacation. When he got back, he found that the place had been ransacked.
And how did they know the owner hadn't yet gone to the bank? Maybe one of the workers tipped him off that the owner wasn't around, which means this heist could have been an inside job, or maybe a delivery worker. They get deliveries of beverages and food and supplies. Maybe they delivered a lot and they knew what was going on, knew the owner was going to be out of town. Either way, it was definitely not a random smash and grab type attack. A lot of thought went into what was going to happen and when it was going to happen. On top of that, the back entrance that they went to, it was way less obvious than this little place. In fact, it wasn't visible at all from the street.
They must have known what they needed to do in order to get in here.
The thieves went around the corner, down the stairs, through a back alley, and pried open this metal door with
The juxtaposition of this is really interesting. So, Cash Jordan's talking about theft in New York, right? And stealing $100,000 from a store is a lot of money. Why they hid $100,000 in the store, I don't know. That shouldn't be. But down on the other screen, we're looking at an actress being interviewed. This is one of the British film festivals that are taking place. I don't know this actor. This is the 77th British Academy Film Award. And just the disparity of the rich and the poor, and the glamorous and the filth, right? That's going on. And believe me, mainstream media wants to pretend that you'll be here, okay? In glitz and glamour, that you can aspire to it if you try hard enough. But the reality is most Americans are going to be living in filth, squalor, crime. And so there is this divide that's taking place, which will get worse with AI. Trust me, where the divide between the rich and the poor, the affluent and the non-affluent, is going to get greater. And majority of Americans in the middle class are going to end up in the poor category, not in the glitz and glamour. The problems that the average American retiree on a fixed income, worrying about medication versus eating, not having money to go out for entertainment, all these types of things that seem to be, as you're younger in America, you're accustomed to enjoying going out to eat, going to the movie theater, going for a vacation, all these things. The average American citizen, when AI takes over, when AI is fully implemented in the workplace, the average American is going to have food insecurity. They're not going to be able to have the entertainment enjoyment they used to have. They won't be able to buy tickets to the NFL football. They won't be able to go to a hockey game. They're not going to be able to pay for their child to get piano lessons or tennis lessons. Your life in America, that standard of living is going to be flushed down the toilet. And you're going to have people that will be affluent, that will continue to enjoy their life, but the far majority will be moving into the poor category. Now, what are you going to do? Most likely nothing, because the two most important things that have happened in recent years, most people did nothing in terms of stopping the tyranny of the government. Didn't stop it with no food, no formula for the children. Where did the mothers protest that? They didn't. The last I looked, we still have biolabs that are making stuff they shouldn't be making. National security state is being built up. And then people think that the savior is going to be Bitcoin. Are you kidding me? Blockchain is the backbone technology for decaching America, surveillance technology, and the ability to sanction a citizen if they do something they don't like. It's called debanking. So everyone that jumped on the bandwagon for Bitcoin, thank you very much for beta testing 1984. Thank you for beta testing one of the pieces to the Biopatriot Act. Stupid.
6-foot crowbar to gain entry.
Now, I've been in basements in a building interior before. When you go down in there, it's not like there's just one door. There's a whole bunch of doors. Some could lead to apartments, some could lead to the businesses, some could lead to the basement, but they only broke in to the one door they needed to access to get inside the deli. They didn't go into the wrong door. They knew where to go. But there's no ultimate confirmation as to who these people were, who these people weren't. My guess, with the amount of insider knowledge these guys had that allowed them to commit their crime in the first place, we're probably talking about local criminals here. But the next gang the police caught wasn't targeting local bodegas. No, they were targeting the rich.
My name is Tim Grover. I'm a performance coach and a motivational speaker for high-performing individuals. I was like,
high-end bars in Lower Manhattan, targeted by a criminal crew, setting its sights on people who are drunk.
Yeah, police say that crew would lure in men, then clean them out, then spend 6 figures on luxury products.
So, as you can imagine, there are a lot of bars and restaurants all over Manhattan. Around 10,000 of them in total. And since there's a lot of wealthy people who go to these places, if you're a criminal, each bar is a potential location for you to spot a victim. And when someone's at a bar or a restaurant, they're trying to have a good time, their guard is down. And what you've got here is your classic honeypot scheme. You're at one of these places and an attractive stranger approaches you. They seem interested, and they are interested, but not for the reasons you might think.
They have different
cell phones and credit cards. Once they get the victim's property at high-end stores, as well as at Apple, where they've been running up charges upwards of $100,000 to $200,000 per incident.
Okay, that's insane. $200,000 in multiple incidents? That's double the bodega heist. Except this time, the customer was targeted at a lounge like this for being rich. The New York Times refers to these people as Grinch boys, and apparently what they were doing after robbing somebody, there's a 24-hour Apple store right here in the city, and they would go there with their credit cards and buy a whole bunch of stuff and then sell that stuff later. They were robbing people at 2 a.m. and buying iPhones at 3 a.m. And there was a terrible amount of sophistication that went into this operation, including how they selected who they thought was rich.
Prosecutors say Pomares was the ringleader. He allegedly directed women to chat up men and gain their trust before robbing them.
I was intoxicated, also very tired. I'm pretty sure that's why I was targeted by those two women.
So it sounds like the way the gang operated was they would have their female operatives already inside the bar when victims started showing up, which to the unsuspecting victims would not seem out of the ordinary at all. It probably looked like the after-work crowd or girls' night out or just an average evening in the city. Nothing suspicious about this. And after striking up a casual conversation, they could figure out what this person does for a living, how much they make, where they live, who they're hanging out with. They know everything about you. To the victims, they're buying drinks, chatting up attractive singles, but the crooks are waiting until they get drunk, and then they're going to rob them. And what's frightening about this is there are so many ways that could happen. It could be as simple as lifting someone's credit card when they're not paying attention, doing the same thing to their phone when they're not paying attention, or leaving with them and going to another location, and then either having one of your thug friends rob them when they're out on the street walking, or wait till they bring you to their apartment and then rob them when you're there.
Detectives say once they marked a target, women would get them to leave a bar, go somewhere else, take their belongings, and spend as much money before the victim realized what happened.
At the time, I left the bar and was trying to get back to my new apartment. They were able to get my wallets and they had my phone.
Now, what's crazy about this type of scheme is it's probably way more common than just this one story. I mean, think about it. We're all essentially a walking bank, but there's something about this particular crime that made the gang easy to find. According to the New York Times, the criminals were active on social media, where they would brag about how much money they were stolen and how rich they were. But that brings up the issue of New York City's sanctuary status. And how are the police supposed to find criminals if they have no way of identifying them or using the internet to track them down? The answers to these questions are not reassuring.
This is PNN. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the ashwagandha root, which will control your blood glucose levels. It'll also help with when you bring down that blood glucose level, it'll bring down that inflammatory response at the cardiovascular level. So this is synergistic with the turmeric. And part of the anti-aging protocol is to bring down inflammation. So you get turmeric, brings down the inflammation. It's also an antioxidant. And ashwagandha root to control your blood glucose levels and to improve your cardiovascular health. So please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the ashwagandha root. Vitamin C, very important for your immune system. If you're not feeling well, take a double dose, but take this every day. It also has magnesium in it. So in addition, vitamin C is important for skin health because collagen will cross-link with vitamin C when you're drinking water. So make sure that you're drinking 64 ounces of filtered water a day just for overall health. But to improve your skin, take the C60 and also take the collagen that I have on my store. By doing that, you're going to improve the dermal layer of your skin. So vitamin C will help with your immune system, and vitamin C will also help with your skin. It is an antioxidant, but it's not as strong of an antioxidant as resveratrol or C60. So, but you do need vitamin C for skin health and for your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And lastly, D3. Vitamin D3 is important to absorb calcium, but also it is a gene expression cofactor, which means that if you are taking D3, you will have the cofactors to allow for proper gene expression. If a cell is infected, you actually need D3 to help go into to help the cell go into apoptosis and get rid of that infected cell. Being low on D3, you don't have the gene expression activity that you should be having, nor do you have the apoptotic effect when you need it to be activated. So please go to the store and get the vitamin D3. If you pay attention to me very carefully, it's not just about one item. It's about the synergistic effects, such as vitamin C, water, and collagen, to improve your dermal layer, or to help with tissues that need to be rejuvenated, vitamin D3 and resveratrol. Resveratrol to get rid of senescent cells, D3 to help with that apoptosis and gene expression. The resveratrol is also an antioxidant. See, it's about synergy. Let's go back to Cash Jordan.
The increase in crime has some wondering if bills signed into law under Mayor de Blasio that prevent the NYPD from cooperating with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement should be reconsidered.
So it sounds like some of the laws on the books in New York City that are not necessarily recent, they're why the police are having a really tough time with some of the gang activity and the normal tough amount of time with some of the other gang activity. The ex-mayor in question here, Bill de Blasio, is a former progressive two-term mayor of New York. And look, I'm all for separation of powers, but the question that a lot of people have is, how is New York City supposed to use information the federal government may have about violent criminals who could be in the city if they're not allowed to talk to the government? The laws in question removed ICE agents from certain police-related activities and from certain city correctional facilities. And it limited the NYPD's cooperation with ICE only to situations that were putting the general public in immediate danger. Since there's no longer any cooperation with immigration, if the NYPD apprehends somebody who's wanted by federal authorities, whereas before these laws were passed, they may have held that person and then turned them over to ICE. Now that does not happen. There's no cooperation. They just release them and it's up to ICE to track them down. Now, yes, New York City is a sanctuary city, and these laws were designed to prevent unnecessary or unfair deportations in the eyes of officials at the time. But because of the rising crime, people are now talking about rolling some of these back so that the police can have more information to keep the city safe.
These sanctuary city policies are ridiculous. They're impeding our law enforcement officials. They're making those same law enforcement officials less safe, and by consequence, they're making all of us less safe.
So the issue here is that when somebody enters the country, the federal government checks them out, processes them, but then when they come to New York and make a shelter request, part of that process starts all over again. And that's why controversial policies like the idea of creating ID cards for people who've entered the country, those don't sit well with everybody, but they would give the NYPD more information because, hey, you could have to present this ID. Now, I'm not advocating for that system, but a lot of times the NYPD's going in blind when they encounter somebody, which is why it might be a good idea to start cooperating with the federal government. But according to the New York Post, not only are many of these suspects free without bail, they're referring to these criminals as ghost perpetrators who swap identities with other criminals and have multiple aliases they can use anytime, which means not only are New York City's lax court laws making it easy for people to get away with no consequences, once they're back out on the street, they could claim to be anybody and go on as they were. And on top of that, some of the criminals caught in the nightclub extortion schemes, they're back out on the streets too, and they're local New Yorkers, which makes it seem like criminals are taking advantage of New York's laws that were designed to make sure that people, no matter who they are or where they're from, are not unfairly treated by our justice system and incorrectly prosecuted. But should those people back? Do we have too many of them to begin with? How would you fix the asylum crisis here? Let me know. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next.
We don't have the money, kick them out. Send them back to where they are. Make sure we don't have a porous border. And oh, by the way, the citizens should be armed. Now, I have different anti-aging boxes on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. They are curated in such a way so it's a quick way to pick what you need to improve your health. And each box is a different price point and a different amount of items that are in it. Now, I have this anti-Fauci box, beginners and advanced. The beginners box has Max 35, which is a structural nano-silver liquid that you take a teaspoon of it a day. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day. I also have the ashwagandha root, which will bring down the blood glucose levels. Turmeric, which will bring down the inflammation and it's an antioxidant. Magnesium and zinc, which will help boost your immune system. And the vitamin D3, that is a gene expression cofactor and help to get rid of get the cells to go into apoptosis that have been infected. In addition, vitamin D3 helps to absorb calcium. That's the beginner's box. That costs $200. You get a lot to boost up your immune system, bring down that inflammation, and neutralize pathogens. The advanced box, you can pick coconut oil C60 or avocado C60. C60 is a very strong antioxidant, and that will bring down the free radicals that are causing cellular damage. It will slow down the aging process if you take it regularly. In addition, you will actually be boosting up your immune system. Why? Because you have less cells that are going in either necrosis irreversibly or reversibly. So the best thing to do is go to the store and purchase the products that I offer to bring down that inflammation, bring down that free radical, neutralize those pathogens. So in the advanced box, the anti-Fauci advanced box, you can pick a 2-ounce C60 avocado or a 2-ounce coconut, and you get everything else. You also get the Max 35, the ashwagandha root, the turmeric, the magnesium and zinc, and you get the D3, right? For $260. So for $260, you get the C60, you take a full dropper a day. And if you follow this protocol, you are going to notice that you don't get sick as often. Your immune system is going to start to go up. And you are going to actually see your body healing, and you aren't going to be aging as much. Literally, free radicals rust your body. All right? You're oxidizing. So if you soak up that oxidative stress, those free radicals, then your body isn't going to be so stressed at the cellular level. And therefore, it'll have more ATP. The mitochondria will improve. You're going to be having neurons be able to fire more because your neural health will be improved. The other tissues in your body will improve because they'll have more ATP and be able to heal, get rid of the senescent cells, get rid of cells that have been infected through apoptosis. And through that, over time, there's going to be compound benefit, and you're going to start seeing improved immune system and a slowdown in your aging. Trust me. So go to the store and get the anti-Fauci beginner's box or the anti-Fauci advanced box. So now let's play the Ukraine withdrawal forces from Eastern City. All right, here we go. This is CBS.
They forcefully reiterated support for Ukraine, even as the country suffered a major loss in the battlefield against Russian forces. CBS's Natalie Brand is at the White House for us. Natalie, good evening.
Good evening, Meg. President Biden called Ukraine's president today as Ukrainian soldiers were forced to withdraw from a key city. The White House says they are having to ration ammunition and blames congressional inaction.
Russian forces raised their flag in the eastern city of Avdiivka, what had been a Ukrainian stronghold and symbol of resistance since Russia's invasion nearly 2 years ago.
So I'm going to fight to get them the ammunition they need. That's what they need.
President Biden's pledge comes as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky appealed to world leaders at the Munich Security Conference.
You have been an extraordinarily courageous leader.
The Vice President Kamala Harris emphasized unwavering U.S. support, even as the timing of more security assistance remains in question, held up in the U.S. House, now on a nearly 2-week recess.
We do not currently look into alternatives because we are counting on the United States.
But it's unclear if and when the House Speaker will take up the bipartisan foreign.
If it was such a stronghold for the Ukrainians, why did they fold so quickly? The Ukrainians cannot win the war. It's not going to happen unless the United States keeps on funding more and more money and more equipment and more of our special forces. The Ukrainian people don't even want to fight the war.
Package passed this week in the Senate.
There's only Plan A, which is to ensure that Ukraine receives what it needs.
Right now, you've got Congress saying, well, do we support Ukraine and Israel, or do we support the border? Don't let them lie to you like that. That's a false premise.
Nikki Haley on a bus tour through South Carolina criticized
The
former
last I looked, we have a limited amount of resources, Nikki. We can't fund the Ukraine, deal with Israel, make sure we have readiness against China, and deal with the border crisis all at the same time. We got to pick and choose. We gave a lot of money and a lot of time to Ukraine to get their act together. They didn't do it. They failed. It's time to pull out. It's that simple. They were given it a chance. And not only that, there's corruption that's going on in Ukraine.
for interfering with congressional negotiations, and she questioned the GOP frontrunner's ability to balance the campaign trail and courtroom. Trump, appearing at a sneaker show in the battleground state of Pennsylvania one day after facing defeat in his New York civil fraud case, has made his legal battles a rallying cry.
They're after him for no reason. Go out and vote for Trump.
A judge has ordered Trump to pay a more than $350 million fine in that case, plus interest. He has said he will appeal. Meg.
Natalie Brand, thank you.
I'll tell you, the judicial system is run amok, and it's like, what? Even if he was at fault, which I don't believe that Trump was, how could you justify over a $300 million settlement, a $300 million reward to her? That is insane. See, what it is that if you go against the system, they'll try to destroy you, your reputation, your financial prowess, your ability to run for office, if you go against the system. And you even saw that during people that were covering the crisis. If you were against the mainstream narrative, they try to destroy you. And depending on how big of an influencer you may have been, how big of a sounding board you may have, that depended on how hard they went after you. And then you add in insult to injury with the infighting that was going on with, quote, the truther movement, quote, independent journalists, the patriots, right? There was infighting with that. The bottom line is this: we have the country going in the wrong direction. And I am starting to really believe that there's no way to stop it unless there is a group of people, a large group of people, in mass, coordinated around the country to protest. And maybe we should take a lesson from what is going on in Europe with the farmers and chokehold some of these cities in the United States in such a way where they submit to freedom and not submit to the tyranny of the government. Now, there's some talk, I don't know if it's true or not, but there's some talk that truckers are going to stop delivering to New York City. that may be a few truckers are doing this, but if it really gains momentum and it's of a similar magnitude of what is going on in Europe in terms of the protesting of the farmers, then you can totally cripple the city. Now, you know, I live in New York City, but I'm all for showing solidarity to people that want a free country versus run by a bunch of crazy liberals. And maybe that's one way to do it, is chokehold these cities and don't deliver goods and services to them and have them capitulate. It's almost medieval in a way, and how to use globalization as the Achilles heel of these major cities to get them to stop with their liberal agenda. That's a potential means. Another potential means is to protest at City Hall and at the state legislatures and at the governor's mansions around the country on the same day, not just one day, but multiple days, not just one area, but everywhere in all the states, and demand of accountability of its government. Shut down the national security state. Stop the 1984 surveillance. Stop the Bio-Patriot Act. But the bottom line is that Americans won't do anything about it. Then you'll hear people that are listening to me go, well, what are you doing about it, Dr. What are you doing about it? I've done enough. I want some citizens out there to actually step up to the plate and fight for their country. They won't. And we will lose the country that we were born into. Because people want to be keyboard warriors and not real citizens. A keyboard warrior is not a real citizen. With that said, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the supplements that I offer to improve your health, boost up your immune system, and slow down the aging process. In addition, please make sure you subscribe to all 6 channels I have. I have 3 channels on YouTube. They're heavily censored. There are certain things I can't have up. I've been getting strikes on one of the channels recently, so that's been in a dormant phase for a little while. And please make sure that you subscribe to my Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble channels. Make sure that you follow me on GETTR and on X, so you get the announcements, because announcements are delayed on some of the YouTube channels. So make sure that you subscribe to all the channels and X and GETTR. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.